be able to learn from the states that have under this and do so to ensure that charter schools get a fair hearing, prevent the adversarial outcomes that too frequently come from the appeals process, and to ensure that choice is given meaning in rural school districts and small school districts. I urge support of my amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Minnesota.
Mr. Chairman, I claim time in opposition, although I do not intend to oppose the amendment.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The gentleman from Colorado has very succinctly, clearly, I would say even eloquently explained a problem in the authorizing business and charter schools and offered a very, very good solution. This is a good amendment. It improves the bill. I support it. I yield back.
Question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Colorado. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. It is now in order to consider amendment number 6, printed in Part A of House Report 112-200. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 6, printed in Part A of House Report number 112-200, offered by Ms. Moore of Wisconsin.
Pursuant to House Resolution 392, the gentlewoman from Wisconsin, Ms. Moore, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Wisconsin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise today to encourage my colleagues to support my amendment to H.R. 2218, which would strike a provision that allows governors to apply and receive direct grants from the federal government and preempts state education agencies from their oversight and operational responsibilities. Let me say, before I defend this amendment, that I think that H.R. 2218 makes very critical changes to the charter school program that are long overdue, and it moves in the right direction in terms of being more inclusive of students, including groups that have typically had limited access to charters, such as students with disabilities and English language learners. I believe that my amendment will secure and protect these improvements and expansions of charter school programs. I really question the wisdom of putting governors' offices in the business of overseeing charter programs and implementing these extremely complex programs. We do know that governors' offices do not have the infrastructure, expertise, or staff to do the job, a job which includes close monitoring of schools, holding authorities accountable, and much more. These are intricate programs with multiple moving parts that require time and labor-intensive administration. I do believe that in my own state of Wisconsin, for example, we have constitutionally elected superintendents of public instruction, and it should remain within their purview to oversee and administer this program. Certainly, we all want governors to be involved, but I think that, that my amendment makes it really clear that the ultimate responsibility should stay with those state public instruction agencies. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves her time. Gentleman from Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to claim time in opposition, and I oppose the amendment.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All across the country, we've seen governors and other state and local officials stand up in support of important education reform efforts that put the interest of children first. The underlying legislation before us today expands the number of state entities that may compete for charter school funding, allowing governors to act on their support for charter schools. It addresses a real concern that has arisen in states that do not have a state education agency which supports charter schools. Today, there are more than 420,000 students on charter school wait list. And we've all seen the recent documentaries, Waiting for Superman and The Lottery. These have chronicled the experiences of low-income students trapped in failing schools, desperate for better education opportunities. Instead of helping states meet this truly incredible demand for more high-quality charter schools, unfortunately, this amendment would actually stifle charter school growth by limiting a governor's ability to support these innovative institutions. At the core of this bill is our desire to see more quality charter schools available for more students, more choice, more opportunity, less waiting for Superman. And so I oppose this amendment because it works in opposition to what the underlying bill is trying to do and what we're trying to do, and that's give the states more opportunities to create and replicate more quality charter schools are reserved.
Gentleman reserves his time.
Happy to yield.
Yeah, and I know Ms. Moore has reserved her time so she can respond to this, but I just want to say I think we tried to work this out in this legislation in the fashion that a governor must do this, if a governor makes application, he must do this in conjunction with the SCA, and that the idea that the governor would do this on his own or whatever, we've forced that working together simply because, as you point out, not every governor's office, most governor's office would not have the internal capacity to carry out the responsibilities under the grant. But to deny the governor the opportunity seems to me doesn't make sense when it's required that the SCA be involved. I just say I know why you're offering the amendment, and you know, I'm obviously reluctant to oppose it, but I think we've addressed this concern in the legislation. I thank the gentleman for yielding.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentlelady from Wisconsin.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank the gentleman for responding even though they're opposed. Let me say that I am old enough to have gone through several gubernatorial races, and governors run for office based on crime prevention and crime control, economic development, lowering taxes, environmental protection, and even welfare reform. And so the public in many states have elected to elect separate constitutional officers that deal solely with educational opportunity. And by not adopting this amendment, we are literally cutting off the legs of these statewide constitutional officers to do the only duty for which they're elected, and that is for educational purposes, and transferring those duties to a governor whose agenda may have nothing to do with education at all. With respect to the notion that the governor has to work with the local or with the statewide public superintendent of instruction, under current law right now, superintendents do work with the governor. And so I am sad that this is being opposed by both the majority and the minority on this committee, because I do think that rather than expanding opportunities for these 420,000 charter school students, it is going to really put them all under the purview of some ideology of some governor, Democrat, Republican, independent, whatever. It's going to, they're going to be subsumed by ideology instead of under the purview of a publicly elected state public instruction superintendent. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back her time. Gentleman from Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I rise in opposition to this amendment. I believe that the underlying legislation, as Ranking Member Miller alluded to, has language in it that strongly encourages, at the very least, governors to work with their SEAs. But I would underscore the point that states are different. Some states are set up with different relationships between the different elected offices. They're not all elected the same way they are maybe in Wisconsin or something. Our underlying purpose here is to expand access to quality charter schools, and I believe this amendment gets in the way of that, so I oppose the amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Wisconsin. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 7, printed in Part A of House Report 112-200. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition? Gentleman from New Jersey.
I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 7, printed in Part A of House Report Number 112-200, offered by Mr. Holt of New Jersey.
Pursuant to House Resolution 392, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Holt, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey.
Mr. Chairman, I thank Chairman Klein and Ranking Member Miller and their staffs for their work to produce this reauthorization bill that makes a good deal of progress from the existing law. I share many of the concerns of our colleagues who want to see even more improvement in the accountability, equity, and transparency of charter schools as we continue to move the bill forward. I have a simple amendment today which in this bill that reauthorizes the charter school program. My amendment encourages the Secretary of Education to award a priority for green school building practices to ensure that any federal investment in charter school facilities would improve the energy efficiency and environmental advantages of those schools. Energy bills are the second highest operating expenditure for schools after personnel costs. Energy bills are the second highest operating expenditures. So we must do all we can to help schools implement green building practices and reduce their energy costs. My amendment will help ensure that schools spend educational resources on educating students rather than heating and cooling inefficient buildings. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, 30% of energy consumed in buildings is used unnecessarily or inefficiently. By using green building techniques to eliminate areas where energy is used unwisely and is wasted, a school's operating costs can be reduced significantly. A dollar wasted on inefficient heating is lost forever. A dollar invested in a child will pay dividends forever. The U.S. Green Building Council supports this amendment, and in a letter to me they wrote, quote, "On average, green schools save $100,000 per year, enough to hire new teachers or buy hundreds of computers or purchase thousands of books." They go on to note that green schools don't cost more, but in fact can be built at or below regional cost and operated within existing facilities budgets and save money. Now, I'm disappointed that the bill we're considering today reauthorizes only charter school programs. We should be considering full reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. We should be considering a public school construction bill. Assisting local school districts with school construction and modernization would help rebuild and upgrade local schools and create jobs. But I do want to see this amendment included in the bill. It will help schools all across America. It will save energy. It will create jobs. It will improve education. I urge its passage, and I reserve the balance of my time. I'd be happy to yield. May I ask the time remaining, please?
Gentleman has 2 minutes remaining.
May I yield a minute to 30
Gentleman is recognized.
I just want to rise in support of this legislation. I think it's very important for all the reasons the gentleman from New Jersey cited. In terms of the savings, we're seeing more and more of schools taking economic liabilities, if you will, such as parking lots and vacant land around the school, turning them into economic assets and saving the kind of money. It's been recorded now for a number of years, the money that's actually saved in these design practices in the schools that free up those resources for other educational purposes. I want to thank the gentleman for offering the amendment.
Thank you. I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Polis.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. I think that the gentleman from New Jersey has, and as he put it, good language that should not only be included in this bill, but I think in other relevant construction bills as well. Very simply, it encourages the Secretary to give priority to states that encourage green building practices and certification. Again, that could be as simple as a state making sure that those options are available. Other states have tax credits or other methods of incentivizing green school development. When we're talking about our national energy policy, and we're talking about how frustrated our constituents are with gas prices, we're talking about our national security as a nation and our energy security, I think that for this Congress to ensure that in every bill, large and small, we encourage, again, without any mandate to school districts, without any requirement, but encourage the Secretary to give priority to states that have at least some system for encouraging green school building development. I think this is a good thing to start right here in a small way. and a bill that certainly won't on its own turn around the energy future of our country, but on its own does have the potential to help drive scale of green technology without compromising educational outcomes. Again, I think that this is an appropriate addition to the bill and will hopefully lead to improvements of energy efficiency in charter schools across the country. I yield back and thank the
gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Minnesota. Does the gentleman reserve? Gentleman from
reserve.
Reserves his time.
Mr.
Gentleman
Chairman.
from Minnesota.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to claim time in opposition to this amendment and oppose the amendment.
Gentleman is recognized.
The underlying bill maintains and strengthens federal support to assist charter schools in accessing credit for facilities construction, as it has in the past and will in this. But it doesn't get into the details of school construction. It doesn't take another step towards getting the federal government involved in school construction. I understand there's a great excitement in some areas about putting green in any construction or in anything for that matter. If it's green, it's apparently it's better. This amendment, I'm afraid, will actually weaken efforts at the state level to fund school construction. It will dramatically increase the cost of building elementary and secondary charter schools, where there's already limited funds available, since state, school districts, and charter schools will be forced to use union workers to construct public charter schools and to comply with this need for green schools. Instead of imposing new burdens on charter schools, we should support state and local efforts to raise student academic achievement, stay out of the school construction business. This amendment is not an appropriate role for the federal government. I urge opposition to the amendment. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from New Jersey.
Mr. Chairman, I think the chairman of the committee reads too much into this amendment. It says, in awarding grants, the Secretary is encouraged to give priority to states that encourage green building practices and certification. In other words, if it certifiably will save energy and thereby save the school district money, it should be encouraged. What in the world could be wrong with that? I would urge my chair to reconsider after he has read this amendment and support us in the passage of this amendment. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Minnesota.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am at the suggestion of my colleague, the gentleman from New Jersey. Indeed, rereading the amendment says priority in awarding grants under this subsection, the Secretary is encouraged, then we've got to figure out what encouraged means, to give priority, I think we know what priority means, to states that encourage, we're encouraging again, green school building practices and certification. Again, I think this language is going to make it more difficult for states to be able to build these charter schools. We're trying to expand charter schools here and improve academic opportunities for schools, not get into a semantics battle over encouraging and green, which this is necessarily going to lead to. So again, I oppose the amendment. And is there time remaining?
There is.
May I inquire?
There's a gentleman, no time remaining.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. All time for debate has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Jersey. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.
I request a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Jersey will be postponed. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 8, printed in Part A of House Report 112-200. For what purpose does the gentleman from Iowa seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk made in order under the rule.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 8, printed in Part A of House Report Number 112-200, offered by Mr. King of Iowa.
Pursuant to House Resolution 392, the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. King, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The gentleman from Iowa is happy to be recognized. And addressing this issue, in particular, it's this, that The intent of this bill is a good intent, and I support it, providing an extra incentive for high-quality charter schools. And it rewards those high-quality charter schools with an opportunity to receive grants that are rewards for that excellence that's there. And I certainly support the initiative and the philosophy behind that. It also identifies high-quality charter schools as those who have achieved strong academic results, student safety, financial management, statutory and regulatory compliance, and has demonstrated significantly increasing student academic achievement for all students. I emphasize all students. And when I read the bill, then it says also has demonstrated success in increasing student academic achievement for the subgroups of students described in. And that's where a lot of people stop reading the bill. But when you go back and look at the reference, it sets it up so that it requires not just that the schools be open and available to students that meet these categories, 4 categories, Mr. Chairman: economic disadvantaged students, students from major racial and ethnic groups, students with disabilities, and students with limited English proficiency. But in fact, the language of the bill requires that all 4 categories must be met in order to qualify for these grants. And I know there's misinformation out there, but this language has been something we have drilled through now for days. What my amendment does is strikes that requirement for that they meet all 4 requirements. They will have to show academic achievement for all students, and that's what I hope to achieve with this amendment. We go back to all students, which automatically includes the redundant list that is, I think, unnecessarily in the bill. And the result will be, if the King Amendment doesn't go on, then we'll have high-quality charter schools that will have to meet 4 standards. Those 4 standards of minorities and disabilities, economically disadvantaged, and limited English proficiencies. For example, an inner-city school that might have all African-American students with no limited English proficiencies might qualify in the other 3 categories but be disqualified because they must meet all 4. That's the purpose of my amendment. I urge its adoption, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I claim the time in opposition.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to the amendment offered by Mr. King of Iowa. We should be very clear about this amendment, what it would do and why it would be incredibly detrimental to our students, our schools, and to our country. In this bill, we require the performance of poor and minority students and students with disabilities to be considered when measuring success of charter schools. That's as we chose to do when we passed No Child Left Behind. Not a perfect education act by any means, but a very important component was the disaggregation of the data so that the parents of each and every one of those children, so the community leaders representing each and one of those children would know how those children were doing. We used to have the day when we asked how these students are doing, how the school is doing, and all we got were the averages, and everybody said, well, it's better, it's better. The fact of the matter is this is to assure that we understand how those children who have access to these schools, how in fact they are individually doing. And these are Title I public schools. They happen to be charter schools, and the point of that is to make sure that poor and minority children, English learners, students with disabilities have a full access to an appropriate education. And to go back to a time when we start to hide those results or we don't hold schools accountable for that is to rip away the fabric of accountability that parents and communities and taxpayers are asking for from those schools. The idea that you would be held accountable for English learners if you had no English learners in your school is simply a hokum. It just isn't what the law says. This would be an absolute disservice to parents, to the students, and to our communities. And it takes us back to the time prior to No Child Left Behind when schools were participating in hiding their failures and champion what they were trying to present to the community as their successes. And that's why we have the charter school movement. That's why we have accountability now that we never had before. That's why this amendment is opposed by so many people who are involved in the promotion of the educational opportunities for these populations, the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools, the Center for American Progress, the Children's Defense Fund, and many others on a list that I would ask to be put into the record at this point, the National Council of La Raza, the National Disability Rights Network. And with that, I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentleman, my chairman of the committee.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I reluctantly rise in opposition to the gentleman from Iowa's amendment. It's an unusual place for me to be on the floor of this House, but I believe that the gentleman from California has correctly outlined the problem. One of the strengths of an otherwise pretty seriously flawed law in No Child Left Behind was the disaggregation of data. It was allowing parents, and in this case authorizers and governors and school boards, to look in and make sure that there was no element in a school body that was being left behind. It is important, since we're trying to replicate high-quality schools, that that information be available, and I'm afraid the gentleman from Iowa's amendment would in fact end up masking that information and depriving those who need to make decisions of the kind of information they need in order to make sure that we're replicating high-quality charter schools. I thank the gentleman. I yield back.
If I may inquire the chair as to time I have remaining.
Gentleman has 1 1/2 minutes remaining.
I yield to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott. 1 1/2 minutes.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment offered by the gentleman from Iowa. The purpose of No Child Left Behind was to ensure that all children are provided a quality education, regardless of race, ethnicity, income, language, status, or disability. Although the original legislation was not perfect and needs improvement, it has helped shed light on achievement gaps facing certain groups of children who are, in fact, being left behind by the current system. We are aware of this deficiency and its enormity because we collect data by subgroups, and we can begin to fix the problem through educational reform. Now, this bill we're debating today is limited to charter schools. H.R. 2218 includes a definition of high-quality charter schools as a school that has demonstrated success in increasing student achievement for subgroup students described in ESEA, namely economically disadvantaged students, students of racial and ethnic minorities, students with disabilities, and students with limited English proficiency. Unfortunately, this amendment would strip away the efforts to identify the students who are not performing and will cover up the fact that some groups of students are in fact being left behind. Any school that is leaving groups of students behind should not be considered high quality. I think we really ought to be collecting this data for all of the schools, not just those trying to achieve high quality, but we need to hold all schools accountable for the success of all students. This amendment goes in the opposite direction and therefore ought to be defeated. I yield back.
Has expired. The gentleman from California's request to insert materials will be covered under general leave. Gentleman from Iowa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield myself so much time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I appreciate the tone and the tenor of this debate, and I'm completely convinced that all parties involved here want to accomplish the same thing, and that is to provide for an opportunity for all young people in America to achieve to the extent of their ability. That's the purpose of this legislation that's before us, high-quality charter schools, and it's the intent of Mr. Miller and Mr. Scott and Mr. Klein and everyone else that likely will vote for this bill. It's also my intent, and I strongly want to see people reach the highest level of their achievement. We need to be in the business in this Congress and aware of it on a daily basis of seeking to increase the average annual productivity of our people. We can do that one at a time out of 1/306 millionth of us. Every one of us that increases our productivity on a daily basis helps the whole. Every class, every generation of people that improve their productivity is good for all of us. It takes the load off of the high earners to have the income coming on the lower earners, for example. It brings that balance about. I want that. I think that's the intent of this bill. When the gentleman from California says it's not what the law says, that I have somehow misunderstood this, I will tell you that I think it has been misrepresented by some analysts behind the scenes, not on this floor. And I will just read this into the record. In short version, I will compress it, and then I'll give you the quote. High-quality charter schools means that the charter school VAT, A, shows strong academic results, B, shows significant issues that has no significant issues in the areas of student safety, financial management, statutory regulatory compliance. C, has demonstrated success in significantly increasing student academic achievement and attainment for all students served by charter schools. I want that. We want that. But D says has demonstrated success in increasing student academic achievement for subgroups of students described. And they are this: economically disadvantaged students. Now that's fine. Most kids are going to be economically disadvantaged. Some students from racial and ethnic groups, that may not be the case. North Dakota or Montana, for example, might have to go a long ways to find someone who meets that category. Students with disabilities, perhaps, but not always. Are we going to ask them to go out and recruit students with disabilities in order to qualify as a high school and a high academic achieving school, a high quality charter school? And the fourth one is students with limited proficiency. That doesn't exist in every region in America where there's a need for a charter school. This sets up a requirement that all four categories be met. And if we wanted reporting, as chairman of the committee has suggested, I would say that let's ask for a report rather than write this all in as a requirement that can't be met, because there only can be two results of this. Either we're going to follow the law if it becomes law, in which case many, many schools will be disenfranchised, will not be able to become high-quality charter schools, or we're going to ignore the law. I don't like either of those results. I want to follow and hear what the intent of this legislation. That's why I've offered this amendment. I'd urge its adoption, and I'd yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Iowa. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman is recognized.
I ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Iowa will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise?
I move that the committee do now rise.
Question is on the motion that the committee rise. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the committee rises. Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union, having had under consideration H.R. 2218, directs me to report that it has come to no resolution thereon.
The Chair of the Committee of the Whole House of the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration H.R. 2218 and has come to no resolution thereon. After consultation among the Speaker and the majority and minority leaders, and with their consent, the Chair announces that when the two houses meet tonight in joint session to hear an address by the President of the United States, only the doors immediately opposite the Speaker and those immediately to the left and right will be open. No one will be allowed on the floor of the House who does not have the privilege of the floor of the House. Due to the large attendance that is anticipated, the rule regarding the privilege of the floor must be strictly enforced. Children of members will not be permitted on the floor. The cooperation of all members is requested. The practice of reserving seats prior to the joint session by the place card will not be allowed. Members may reserve their seats only by physical presence following the security sweep of the chamber. The Chair lays before the House the following personal request.
Leaves of absence requested for Mr. Culberson of Texas for today and Mr. Marino of Pennsylvania for today and the balance of the week.
Without objection, the requests are granted. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until approximately 6:35 p.m. for the purpose of receiving in joint session the President of the United States.
The House has completed legislative work for today. Members worked on a bill to expand charter schools throughout the U.S. The House